News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
5 after 5 now on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm Will Feelwright with your local headlines. Of course, happening earlier today, Utah State University officially welcoming its newest men's basketball coach, Ben Jacobson, from Northern Arizona to Cache Valley. Now, in a press conference that was held at Utah State, President Brad Mortensen, along with USU Vice President of Athletics Cam Walker, introducing Coach Jacobson, who becomes now the 23rd coach of the Aggie men. Now, Coach Jacobson said he had watched the Aggies for years, especially with their run in the NCAA tournament, and was excited about the challenge of Utah State moving into the Pac-12.
Everybody in here has done a lot for us, and we're gonna make sure that we pay that back. As we got one goal, right? Each year when we get started, we have one goal, and that's to have as much fun as we possibly can together. That's the one goal that we have. And I've got one expectation for you, okay? That you give everything you've got for the person next to you. Right? And not just on the team, but with the staff, in the program, in the room, that we give everything we've got for the person next to us. That's the only goal we've got. It's the only expectation I've got for you.
Now, Coach Jacobson is meeting with the players this afternoon. Earlier in that press conference, President Mortensen said he was excited to have Coach Jacobson at Utah State.
I'm so excited to have Coach Jacobson with us, and we're lucky to have him here. You know, he's had a storied 20-year career at another institution, and some other folks tried to draw him away, I think, a time or two, and but he's found the right place, and the timing's worked out really well, and we're excited to have him at Utah State. Camille.
Now, President Mortensen also praised Vice President of Athletics Cameron Walker for the search that he has done over the last 10 days since the rumors began to fly that Coach Jared Calhoun was leaving. Well, in other news, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announcing it is adjusting its regular Sunday worship schedule beginning this fall, replacing alternating class weeks with weekly 25-minute sessions for adult and youth organizations. Now, announced by the First Presidency yesterday ahead of this weekend's General Conference, the changes will take effect September 6th. Now, the overall Sunday worship block will still remain 2 hours, a format that the church implemented in 2019. But under the updated schedule, sacrament meetings will continue to be 60 minutes. But then after a brief transition, members will attend both Sunday school and their respective organization meetings, Relief Society, Elders Quorum, Young Women, or Aaronic Priesthood, every week for 25 minutes each. Now, primary classes for children will continue to run for 55 minutes. Now, church leaders say that the adjustments will enhance community and deepen spiritual learning. Congregations will be dedicating meetings coming up in August and early September to prepare for the transition. Now, of course, KVNU will once again be broadcasting the Saturday and Sunday sessions of General Conference. The meetings will air both days at 10 a.m. to noon and 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And finally, the defense teams for the man accused of fatally shooting political influencer Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University are now asking a judge to postpone his May preliminary hearings to allow more time to review massive amounts of evidence. Tyler James Robinson faces an aggravated murder charge with a victim targeting enhancement for the September 10th killing that occurred on campus. Now, the Utah County Attorney's Office is seeking the death penalty in a motion that was filed late last week. Robinson's attorneys argue that they cannot adequately cross-examine witnesses or present evidence without more time to review discovery. Now, the defense recently received more than 600,000 files, which they expect will take 60 days to process. Now, in addition to 700 hours of video, there's also 31 hours of audio that was already provided. Now, the defense is also awaiting a crucial forensic report, including DNA, phone data, and ballistics. Attorneys note that the ATF upcoming report could show investigators could not match the bullet recovered during the autopsy to the rifle allegedly tied to Robinson. Well, we've got showers, thunderstorms continuing in the forecast. In fact, heavy rain expected for tonight into tomorrow, as temperatures today have been in the high 50s. Tomorrow will be around the mid to low 50s and then 40s coming for Thursday and Friday, as the storm expected to bring precipitation through Friday afternoon, then clearing up for the Easter weekend. And weather this hour brought to you by Logan Extermination. Yeah, don't let pests or disease kill your trees again this year. Logan Extermination offers a dormant tree spray to help protect your precious trees. Call and get signed up today, 752-8450. And I'm Will Feelright for KVNU News.
This is Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance, and we are now Alera Group. This is great news for you. Now you have more choices and strength of a top national broker in your corner with our local personal service. Every situation is unique. Now we can tailor coverages from deductibles and limits to risk management, so it fits you even better. Let's compare options and tighten your program. Same friendly faces, same local office. Call 435-752-0101.
Covering all the news. Stay with 610 AM and 102.1 FM. News Talk KVNU.
Today's hearing aid technology can improve not only your life, but the lives of the people who care about you. Once again, you'll be able to hear the reason for their laughter and understand conversations. Dr. Paul Danes at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology will customize a hearing improvement program to meet your unique requirements, whatever they are. Call Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology for an appointment and let them show you how.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People, hour 2 of today's show. 59 degrees here at the Radio Ranch at 5:11 in the afternoon. Actually went up a degree. Could be a little cooler this week, but, man, it is nice outside. Very late spring as opposed to early spring. So, doesn't look like this is going to change, very much, but we might get some water this week, which we need a little bit. I've got dry spots on the lawn already, and it's still March. All right, coming up this hour, we'll kick things off here with your sneak preview of this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas. We'll hear from USU president and the coach himself after USU today held an introductory press conference for new USU men's basketball coach Ben Jacobson. Got that audio for you coming up later on in the hour. The future of Utah's own conversion therapy ban in question with the announcement today from the United States Supreme Court that they had sided with. Now there's some, the headlines don't really do this one justice. The Supreme Court did not strike down Colorado's conversion therapy law. They said, we do believe Colorado's law asks or is searching a First Amendment question, is how the court worded it. So that basically is applying a Supreme Court is saying this should be our standard for whether we determine whether a state law is constitutional or not. And then they kick it back down to the lower courts who will now have to review the law. So the law is still in place in Colorado, but this was basically the Supreme Court saying these laws are troublesome for various reasons. Colorado's law, very different than Utah's law. So is Utah's conversion therapy ban in question? Big debate today. We'll get to that later on in the hour as well. So kicking things off here, this one, as I said in hour 2 and attempted to provide in hour 2, requires some setup. Because I realize that all of our listeners might not be, and good for you, by the way, you might not be terminally online, as the kids say, which means you're spending way too many minutes or even hours of your day scrolling Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or Snap is still around, Twitch streams. There are so many. But to be terminally online means that you're up on every trending topic and debate of the day. And you shouldn't be. Being up on them is fine, but knowing every intimate detail and following it like a soap opera, also, as the kids say, go outside and touch grass. This I had to do some research on when I started hearing some of these words being floated around in Utah. So, to set up this week's Sutherland Institute Defending Ideas sneak preview, Nick Dunn and Donald Bryson, president and CEO of the John Locke Foundation, are sitting down this week to answer a simple question. What does it mean to be a conservative in this day and age? Is MAGA conservative? Is MAGA Republican? Are some of these other factions within the party right now, are they Republican? That's a national debate that's been going on for, it's not new. It's new to Utah. It's come to Utah in the form of a handful of college Republicans at the University of Utah. They themselves call themselves Republicans and say they're hoping to ride the success of TPUSA, Charlie Kirk's organization, that saw a big swell in support and interest after his assassination, of course. They want to basically engage young people, get them involved, and of course, get them involved in conservative activism. That's the stated goal. Critics, though, have pointed out that there's 3 or 4 of them that have been named, at least on social media that I've seen, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake, who are heading up the University of Utah's College Republican Group and have gotten some love from the Utah GOP chair, state lawmakers. Critics within the Republican Party have told me and have said publicly, these are not Republicans. They're not even conservatives. They're groypers. And I didn't know what that was, so I had to go look. A groyper apparently is a name given to themselves. It's not even a slur or a derogatory term. They call themselves groypers. These are followers of a very online person, an influencer named Nick Fuentes, who, short version, is a Holocaust-denying racist and also has some pretty awful things to say about women. He has attracted a large following, mostly of late teens, early 20s young men. He is, I would dare say, not a great person. But he has almost a religious cult-like following. And so within the Utah GOP, this debate has erupted. People accusing some of these young men, mostly within the college Republican group, of being hijackers. One person said in a letter that was published by I don't remember if it was the Deseret News or the Salt Lake Tribune, said they're hijacking the Utah Republican Party because they can't build their own party, and these are not even conservatives. They're not even Republicans. So I don't know where that debate goes, but the question, what is conservative? What is a conservative in this day and age, in the MAGA era, basically, has come to Utah. So Nick and Donald Bryson Nick Dunn of Sutherland Institute and Donald Bryson, president and CEO of the John Locke Foundation, bravely are wading into this one this week. It's this week's sneak preview of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas.
How do you define conservatism in 2026? And then secondly, if you were to kind of give a diagnosis of the state of the movement, the health of the movement today amidst everything going on, what would you say?
I'll work backwards on those a little bit. I think that the conservative movement generally right now is fractured, because I think at its root, we're arguing amongst ourselves about what it is we're conserving. That's the root of conservatism, right? Is to conserve something. And, I think on one end, you have people that would describe themselves as national conservatives, sort of this nationalist approach, blood and soil nationalism, that there is something special about the people that are in America and the blood of the people that are in America and the soil that we are on, and that what they are perceiving as whatever it is they perceive as American culture is what should be conserved. I signed on to the freedom conservatism statement of principles myself. I was one of the original 83 signatories, and that I would call that sort of the other camp, and there are people all in between these two. And I think that where I come from on it is, yes, America is a great country. We have done great things and will continue to do great things. But all of the things that they like about that national conservatives and nationalists like about America, the reason that we became that nation is because we had the underpinnings of freedom and liberty that created the political culture that allowed us to become such a great nation. And so in that way, I think that what we should be preserving is individual freedom of thought, right to your own labor, freedom of speech, freedom to move capital back and forth across borders, all of those things that we would typically consider within the freedom movement. And so conservatism now is really at odds with itself because it's a conversation about where power derives from and where power should actually be.
Donald, a quick follow-up to that. One of the things that I've seen in a lot of the online discussions and debates and in some of the news coverage of these fractures or fissures, as you might call it, is sort of this question of, and you alluded to it, but this idea of power and political power and what kinds of power to use. And in my perception, kind of the traditional or the classical conservative approach was a core tenet of conservatism has been, and I think still should be, this idea that you want to dissipate power. You don't want to have power so centralized, for example, in Washington, D.C., that it becomes so big that it can override our rights. There's actually a benefit to federalism. There's a benefit to constitutional checks and balances and constitutional constraints. Those are all conservative tenets. It seems a little bit now that maybe some are arguing, well, no, you should wield more government power for quote unquote conservative ends, which is really just for specific desired policy ends. Is that the right read of one of the tension points?
I think that, your finger is right on the pulse. And I think at its heart, that probably is the tension point, and everything else around it there are just echoes of that conversation. So if you go back to 1960, 1964, when what we would call now the modern conservative movement began to meld, and you had, Barry Goldwater trying to get this coalition of people to vote for Richard Nixon in 1960 and then to vote for himself in 1964. But they started sort of as a counter to what I will call it Rockefeller or Roosevelt republicanism. The idea was the skepticism of power. John Locke writes about this a lot. In fact, that's most of what John Locke does is, where does power come from? Well, power in the government comes from the people or from the consent of the governed. Okay. But then how do we mitigate that? Because there tends to be problems with power because humans are fallible, right? We see this in our everyday lives that humans are fallible. This is also a tenet of Judeo-Christianity, right? That Paul writes about this. The Old Testament writes about this, that all have fallen short, right? I'm not trying to be religious necessarily, but to say we all generally agree that humans are flawed. And so this Goldwater version of American conservatism was, if humans are flawed, then we should try to make government as small and as local as possible. And that really bore itself out in Ronald Reagan as president, who famously said that government is not the answer to the problem. Government is the problem. It's also echoed by Lord Acton when he said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can be a fine person, but if you have absolute power, the worst natures of the worst parts of human nature tend to come out. But then came sort of the current political moment. And I think a lot of people try to define President Trump in a particular political camp. And I don't actually think he is in one. I think Donald Trump is Donald Trump. But I think that with him and people that surround his administration, not all of them, but some of them have come up with sort of this national conservative view. They are nationalists, and it is borne out in the language of America first and that sort of thing. And you hear people like the vice president, J.D. Vance said this at a speech at Ole Miss late last year, where he said that, we shouldn't fear using the power of government as conservatives. We shouldn't do that anymore. The left uses it very well, and we just need to figure out how to use it for ourselves. And that's the tension point, right? There's no longer a fear of power in government. It's a willingness, by some people who define themselves as conservative, to use the power of government, to define American culture and policy, even economic policy. And that's where, I start to get some heartburn and I become concerned, because I also know that we're a country of elections. We're a republic. We have elections all the time, and political pendulums swing back and forth. And if my fellow conservatives are willing to use governmental power for this thing, then I know that people that I do not disagree with their sentiments at all will eventually be back in power, but will have that power available to them. And now we are in the moment we are in.
Donald, we need to take a quick break in a minute, but one quick follow-up on that, because I think you captured it so well, and the heartburn is mutual, I guess. I share that with you when I hear those kinds of things, because I think maybe one way to help diagnose the moment we're in politically is that if you, and I mean generally folks out there watching, listening to this, if your political orientation is mostly reliant on who is controlling the levers of power, and that's where all your debates are and all your fights are, as opposed to providing the proper and well-structured constitutional constraints around what those levers of power are, that seems really concerning to me. That if our politics simply becomes who is in charge, kind of a cult of personality on either side, and I think you see some concerning trends in that line of thought on all kind of facets. But if that's the focal point of our political battles and we drift away from what are the structural constraints, that seems very concerning to me, because I agree with what you're saying, and I've tried to share this with folks who are on different sides of political issues than I am, to say that if you want your particular candidate or office holder to have all these kinds of powers to do good things that you agree with and you like, imagine somebody that you disagree with vehemently, that you despise, that you're really afraid of having that same power. And if they're in office and you wouldn't want them to have that same power, there's your limiting principle. We just have to remind people to apply that evenly across the board. And that seems what we've lost a little bit of as a country.
No, I think that's exactly right. That's very well put. It's, conservatism, I think I would put it this way. Conservatism used to be an ideology of where do we put guardrails? And now, a lot of conservatives in the United States have made it an ideology of personality. And that's problematic. And that, John Adams talked about this back, at the founding, where he talked about how we have to create a nation of laws, guardrails, and not of men, personality.
Again, a sneak preview of this week's episode. You can listen to the entire hour-long conversation with Nick Dunn of the Sutherland Institute and Donald Bryson, President and CEO of the John Locke Foundation, at sutherlandinstitute.org. Learn more about the John Locke Foundation at johnlocke.org. That's L-O-C-K-E for those who don't know. And this is I want to add just one thing here myself at the end. And of course, listeners, if you have thoughts on this, how you define conservative, how you feel about the conversation here, and what Donald Bryson has to say. Again, Bryson's saying that to him, conservatism is about, restricting the government, pulling the government back, putting up guardrails, he said. He said for a lot of modern day conservatives or MAGA Republicans, it's more about personality, and it's about using the government to achieve their own agenda, which is what the left does. Agree? Disagree? 753-5868. Adding my own commentary to this, just for perspective, I would say, we've been here before. Both major parties have been here before. If you look and read your history on times when the ideologies have strayed from their own stated mission statement, something eventually comes along and rights the trajectory. But it's not a given that will happen. There are other times in history when a stated ideology starts to stray from its own mission statement and it morphs into something else entirely, and its original iteration never to be seen again. So to the question, people have asked along the same lines of what Nick and Donald are discussing here, there's this constant question, are we witnessing a realignment moment? I remember that discussion when Obama was first elected. Is this a realignment? Now, it turns out that was a bit of a realignment for the Democratic Party. Not in the way its critics usually like to paint it, because it was a very moderate realignment. It was barely moving in a certain direction. then that kind of changed what the Democratic Party and what the idea of being a liberal or progressive was all about in a tiny way. Then when Bernie Sanders came along and tried to change the Democratic Party in a big way, they rejected him. Well, they didn't reject him, but they didn't make him king. They said, we like a lot of your ideas. You're a cool guy. We're glad you caucus with us as an independent. But you can't be our nominee for president. No. So is a similar thing, happening within the Republican Party right now? I don't know. Obviously, MAGA Republicanism or conservatism, whichever word you want to use there, has won the day within the Utah GOP, within the National Republican Party. I mean, obviously he's president, right? But there are questions. You're starting to see cracks, I think. You're seeing more Republican senators, especially, start to stand up a little bit and say, no, there's a core principle of conservatism here. But again, it's hard to predict whether you're seeing a realignment of a party and ideology of conservatism starting to morph into something else entirely, or as Bryson puts it, a more national identity and personality driven movement that wants to use government to achieve its agenda, as opposed to the traditional conservative mindset which wants to rein in government, acknowledging that they won't always be in power. The more power you give to government, eventually the people you disagree with have power, and they use the power you gave government. That's a traditional conservative mentality, a Paul Miro, for longtime listeners of the show, a Paul Miro mentality. That's not really what a lot of the movements within the Republican Party are these days. In fact, the recent signature gathering effort that failed to get a repeal of Proposition 4 on the ballot, you can make the argument that Proposition 4, approved by Utah voters on the ballot in 2018, is more conservative, actually, because it's a restriction on government. The Proposition 4, the voters, by approving that, said politicians and elected officials don't get to draw their own district boundaries to keep themselves in power. We're taking that back and we're giving it to an independent committee that will be reappointed each redistricting cycle every 10 years. That's restricting government. But we just saw the Utah GOP chair, at least, mount this effort to give more power to the state government, to the state legislature specifically. Is that a non-conservative thing to do? Traditionally, yes. But was it agenda based? I give Rob Axson's taken a lot of flack for pushing that, repeal Prop 4 effort. And it's over and done with now. It failed to get on the ballot, but he gets a lot of flack for pushing that. It's his job. I cut him slack on that one for critics who said he shouldn't have, and that it wasted a lot of party money. He's the chair of the party. His job is to increase the number of elected Republicans. That is literally his job. And the court rulings over the lawsuits, accusing the legislature of ignoring Prop 4, that were successful, they reduced the number of Republicans by 1. So Rob Axson's job is to fight that. So I cut him some slack. But the question that has arisen around that, the question that has arisen around, a little movement that's bubbling up, at least in Salt Lake, in the University of Utah's College Republican group, is this actually conservatism? Are these young kids leading the college Republicans at the University of Utah, are they actually conservatives? Are they even Republicans? Again, some evidence they're not. Some evidence because of their ties and connection to a more prominent figure that has been in the headlines and is currently a BYU student, which I'm sure won't cause any problems for him at all, has been connected to a national white supremacist movement, the Groypers. And Republicans have rejected the Groypers. So this is a fascinating debate. Again, this isn't new. There's nothing new about this. I've seen people panicking about this. I've talked to people within the Republican Party panicking about this. Don't panic. Democrats have been through this many times over. Republican Party itself has been through this many times over. Conservatism itself has changed and evolved in different ways. And so traditionally with conservatism, when it has evolved a little bit, it's kind of like an elastic snapped right back. Buckley was an example of that. Conservatism was starting to move a little bit, and Buckley Jr. comes along and says, nuh-uh. We're about restricting government, not using government, not giving government more power just because we're in power right now. We are the people who restrict and put guardrails up. And he reset the whole thing. So if something like that about to happen again, will there be a reset that snaps conservatism back away from where it's kind of gone with MAGA? I don't know. But I do know this. Not the first time any major party has been here. So really interesting discussion. As you can tell, I could talk about this through the whole hour. This is where politics gets a bit philosophical, and it's a fun thing to explore. But my advice, don't personalize it. Even if you're a member of the party that's currently going through it, don't personalize it. Too many people involved, and you can't control what everyone thinks. But understanding it is a fun exercise. Defending Ideas, of course, is a weekly episode from Sutherland Institute, a conservative think tank based in Salt Lake City. That was a sneak preview for our listeners. You can listen to the entire conversation with Nick Dunn of Sutherland Institute and Donald Bryson, his guest this week, president and CEO of the John Locke Foundation, trying to answer that question, trying to define, to guess at the future of conservatism in the MAGA era, with the question being, what in 2026 is a conservative? A link to the full episode on our Facebook page, or find it at sutherlandinstitute.org, and we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Well, thank you, Jason. The U.S. Department of Justice has now asked a federal judge to force Utah to release sensitive personal information about the state's voters. Now, in a motion that was filed in U.S. District Court, the DOJ argues that the data is necessary to assess Utah's compliance with federal election laws. Now, that information would include possibly birth dates, addresses, driver's license numbers, and partial Social Security numbers. Now, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, who oversees Utah's elections, has refused to provide anything beyond publicly available records since the DOJ first filed its lawsuit back in February, citing both state and federal privacy laws. Now, the NAACP, along with the League of Women Voters of Utah, represented by the ACLU, have sided with Henderson. The ACLU warning that the DOJ's request could create a national voter database. Now, Judge David Barlow has not set a timeline on when he may rule on that request. Well, new numbers out show that Salt Lake City International Airport is the second most expensive airport now in the country, driven by surging airfare and rising fuel costs. Now, according to a new national study that was done by a localinsider.com analysis of U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics, it found that the average airfare out of Salt Lake City is now $434 a ticket, trailing only Washington Dulles International Airport. Now, the study, which surveyed over 1,500 Americans, revealed that 68% of respondents now find flying unaffordable. Now, more than half also have delayed a trip due to rising costs, while 28% canceled their plans entirely. Now, the report links the increased ticket prices to rising fuel costs stemming from the ongoing conflict with Iran, alongside operational pressures, such as TSA staffing shortages that have been caused by the partial government shutdown. And finally, a freshwater reservoir beneath the Great Salt Lake's Farmington Bay could help suppress hazardous dust, but researchers say it won't solve Utah's long-term water shortage. Now, University of Utah scientists recently published a study on the water source, which is held within sand and gravel aquifers rather than a cavernous underground pool. Now, the aquifer's natural pressure forces water to the surface, which then soaks the exposed lake bed and creates a hard crust that prevents toxic dust from blowing. Now, experts caution, though, against viewing the aquifer as a large-scale municipal water supply. Researchers noted that their hand-drilled test wells did not recharge quickly as the groundwater replenishes on a geologic timeline rather than flowing continuously like a river. Now, because the full extent of the reservoir and the environmental risks of extracting from it remain unknown, scientists say it cannot viably resolve the state's broader water issues. Well, we've got a chance of rain and thunderstorms continuing in the forecast. In fact, heavy rain expected tonight into tomorrow, as temperatures have been in the high 50s today. Tonight we'll drop into the low 40s, then continue to see clouds and showers through Friday, as some measurable rainfall is expected from this storm that should clear up by Friday night and leave us with a beautiful Easter weekend. And it's the Lawn Doctor that brings you our weather. Here's what you'll notice with Lawn Doctor's two-step soil enrichment. Improved water retention, reduced compaction, stimulated root growth, and an increase in fertilizer and nutrient uptake, all giving you a greener and healthier lawn. Call the Lawn Doctor and get signed up for their two-step soil enrichment program. It's easy to do. Just call 753-LAWN. That's 753-LAWN. And I'm Will Fiore for KVNU News.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packard. President Trump this afternoon saying he's carrying out negotiations with more moderate Iranian leaders.
We've had regime change. We're dealing with people that are much more rational, and it's amazing what we've done.
And the president saying today that Iran doesn't need to make a deal with the U.S. as a prerequisite to stopping the ongoing U.S. military operation, and saying it will be up to European and Asian countries to deal with the fallout of the Strait of Hormuz. In an 8-1 decision, the Supreme Court struck down Colorado's ban on so-called conversion therapy for LGBTQ people on First Amendment free speech grounds. A federal judge today ordering the Trump administration to halt construction of the $400 million ballroom on the site of the demolished White House East Wing pending congressional approval. Less than 24 hours until the launch window for NASA's Artemis II mission, the first moon mission for more than 50 years. This is ABC News.
Did you know you can cut your Rocky Mountain power bill by 40 to 50% without a single solar panel? With the new time of use rates, power is 4.5 times more expensive in the evening, but cheap during the day. At Greenbox Solar, we install smart home batteries that charge up when electricity is cheap, then power your home during peak hours. Solar is totally optional and can be added in the future, but savings are guaranteed. Drop by Greenbox Solar's showroom in South Logan to see the hardware for yourself. Visit our website at poweredbygreenbox.com.
Here's Chad Norton, the Lawn Doctor, with a tip for your lawn.
Less snow this winter means a good chance of less water available this summer, putting more stress on your lawn. Now is the time to strengthen your grass before the heat arrives. Proper fertilization builds deeper roots and improves drought tolerance, leading to a healthier lawn this summer. Get ahead of the summer stress and schedule your lawn services with us today.
Fertilizer, weed, and pest control. Call the Lawn Doctor at 753-LAWN or go to lawndoctor.com.
Well, he looks at me with those innocent eyes and says it looks like you.
Welcome back to KVA News for the people. It is going up, almost at 60 degrees here. What's going on outside? I don't know. I'm in a nice climate-controlled studio here. Listener with some driving tips. Most of this should be happening overnight, but there are a couple of daytime closures and lane restrictions that are going to be a part of the process. I would just put a listener wanted to know a full schedule on that. I don't know the exact dates. I know that Mayor Daines before and now Logan City Mayor Mark Anderson have both told us that it's really going to depend on the way the project plays out. Building this pedestrian underpass under Main Street, they are going to have to restrict. I know there was one day they're saying that Main Street will be closed entirely. I don't know how much of the day, but the entire street will be closed for a bit. And there are going to be some lane restrictions. And of course, if you're driving at nighttime, the lanes have been completely rerouted with basically just orange barricades. And some people just managed to come up on that fast enough to be surprised by it. I've seen some close calls driving through there at night times after leaving the show. If you can avoid the area of the Y intersection as we know it, basically the 3rd South Maverick on south down towards Walmart and Macy's, just avoid the area. Go somewhere else or go around. That's my advice. But I will inquire and see if we can get some exact dates from Logan City. But I know when I asked Mayor Anderson last time, he said, it'll really depend on the weather, the schedule of the project, how well things go. So, but I'll see if they've set exact dates and get back to you tomorrow on the show. Today, Utah State University held a introductory press conference for the new men's basketball coach, Ben Jacobson. There was a lot of excitement on this, and a lot of words were shared. This was nearly an hour and 15-minute long press conference. I'm not going to play the whole thing here for you, but here are some highlights. Here is USU President Brad Mortensen being through the roof excited about this announcement today.
This is a great day for Utah State University, for Utah State Athletics. I'm Brad Mortensen. I'm the president here at the university. And we're very excited to have so many great Aggies come out and welcome our 23rd head men's basketball coach, Ben Jacobson, and his wife, Dawn. We're super excited to have them here and really appreciate all of you coming out to welcome them to Cache Valley and to Utah State. It's been a great whirlwind this last month for men's basketball, from all the success that the guys had on the court, bringing home 2 trophies for both the regular season and then the Mountain West tournament, and getting the win in the first round of the NCAAs. Then we've had this transition, but I'm so excited to have Coach Jacobson with us, and we're lucky to have him here. He's had a storied 20-year career at another institution, and some other folks tried to draw him away, I think, a time or two, but he's found the right place. And
that was, again, the president of Utah State University, Brad Mortensen, speaking there. Several others spoke, and then finally, they turned the time over to Ben himself. Ben Jacobson, the new head coach of USU's men's basketball team, had this to say today about the future of the program.
And then 2 guys that have meant the most to me in basketball is my head coach, Rich Glass, at the University of North Dakota, and Greg McDermott was my assistant coach at that time, and most recently, Coach Mack was at Creighton, and I think as basketball people, we all understand what's happened at Creighton and everything that they have done. And, those 2 have meant a lot to me. They taught me that this isn't about offense and defense. Right? This is about relationships, right? And building those and having them be in a place where you're able to accomplish special things. So I really appreciate about those 2 guys. And then the University of Northern Iowa, right? When, as the president mentioned, being at a place for a long time. When you stay somewhere for a long time, that of course would indicate that it's a special place. Right? They awfully good to Don and I and our family, but just a really special place. So I want to thank them today. So why after 20 years, 25 years, what is it? What are we so excited about, and why am I standing here right now? It's I said it, but it's row 2, right? To be able to take on this challenge with you guys, and the way in which you've done it already. Okay, so we were the next game, right? After your game with Villanova, and we were standing right there when you guys came off that floor, and the excitement. And of course, after you win an NCAA tournament game, right, there's going to be a little bit of excitement. You're going to be bouncing around a little bit, but you could feel the camaraderie, right? And feel the excitement. And I wanted to be part of that. Cam laid out, and we know it, the tremendous success that we have had here. And you can look at the numbers and you can read them and you can see all of the different things, and wanting to be a part of that, very exciting as well. And what a place to do it, right? Our gymnasium, what a place to do it. I'm going to make sure I get it right. 117 and 21 over the last 9 seasons in our gymnasium. So what a place to be able to do it. And I know a lot of that has to do with the herd. I've watched a lot. I've been told a lot. So it's okay if you guys want to hoot and holler for just a second. Like, I would love to hear a little bit of the herd right now. And I'm excited about doing more, right? About the challenge ahead of us with the Pac-12, right? And challenging the herd to, not right now, but when we get back in there, being louder and doing more. And I'll challenge the guys when I get to that point. And one of those, and I said it we had a brief Zoom call. One of those things I talked about was, okay, that first weekend in the NCAA tournament, that's special, right? But there's a next weekend, right? And there's a next weekend after that. And what does that feel like, right? The excitement of that, with the new league and with our leadership and with this group. What does that next weekend look like and feel like, right? Fortunate to have been there as a head coach, right? And want to do that together. There's a ton of excitement in that. I get most excited about people, right? All of you in this room, everything you've done for Utah State, continue to do. our president, Cam, the guys in the team. That's what I get most excited about. I just touched on it in terms of what I'm looking forward to. I've said this a lot. You're going to hear me say it again. I absolutely love coaching. I love coaching. The only thing I love more is being part of a team. I don't know a time for me when I have not been part of a team. Right? And that responsibility that comes with it, counting on the guy or gal next to you, and knowing that you're being counted on. Right? Man, I love doing this. Right? And I'm as excited and ready as I've ever been. Probably the most ready that I have been in my head coaching career. But I love being a part of a team. There is nothing more special than being part of a team. And I look forward to doing that with everybody. Partnering with the community in the Cache Valley, supporting our other teams, being on campus, getting with everybody and being there for each other as head coaches. That's something I'm really looking forward to. And then the vision laid out by Cam, right? I don't know that, that I make this move at this time, if not for the vision that Cam had, right? The things that we are talking about doing, right? And then knowing, really important for me to know, his plan, right? And that we can get that done. And obviously the Pac-12, fellas, let's go get it, huh?
That was, again, new USU men's basketball coach speaking at a press conference that took place earlier today. Utah State University hiring Northern Iowa's Ben Jacobson. He'll be the Aggies' 23rd men's basketball head coach in the program's history. And the university announced this officially Monday morning and then held the press conference on this. It was lengthy. It's a little over an hour. And Utah State University leadership all on hand for that. Cam Walker, the vice president of the entire athletics slew up there, said Utah State is one of the country's premier men's basketball teams, and we needed a leader who embodies the tradition and is committed to building on the rich history. He said Ben is not only an exceptional person, but across the industry is regarded as one of the best coaches in the country. And he'll be a tremendous leader and builder of our program. As we enter the new Pac-12, it's critical that our leader drives us to new heights, and Ben shares the same passion and vision, and I'm thrilled to welcome him and his wife Dawn to Cache Valley. So it is official. I've linked to the full press conference if you'd like to watch the whole hour and 10 minutes on our Facebook page. Also, Jason Walker has a great write-up of Jacobson and others' comments today, and some history of the USU men's basketball program thrown in there for fun as well. Link to that, Utah State hires UNI's Ben Jacobson as next basketball coach. That story at CacheValleyDaily.com and linked on our Facebook page for the show. And we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Tired of the daily grind? There's an easier way to get around. Connect Transit takes the stress out of your commute. No gas, no parking, no hassle. Just a warm seat and a quiet ride. Connect Transit. This is how we roll. Visit rideconnectutah.gov.
I'm Jace Allen, founder of Allen Law. My focus has always been helping families protect what matters most through meaningful estate planning. I've now joined forces with attorney mediator Chris Guyman of the Conflict Resolution Center and seasoned litigator Sam Goebel to form the Allies Law Firm. Whether you're planning ahead, resolving marital conflict, or facing a courtroom battle, we bring strategy, strength, and experience together under one roof. Because when it matters most, you deserve the Allies Law Firm. Call the Allies Law Firm today. We plan, we fight, you win.
Box Elder County. Got a junk car? Here's where it goes now. DD Auto and Salvage in Logan is stepping up, serving Brigham City, Tremont, Willard, Corinne, Garland, and across northern Utah and southern Idaho. They pay top dollar for vehicles and scrap metal, and they'll haul it away for you. Fast, easy, and you get paid.
Take the quick drive to Valley View Highway or just make the call, 787-1204. That's 787-1204. DD Auto and Salvage, Northern Utah and Southern Idaho's go-to for junk car cash.
Logan, Ogden, stand by for details on how much it costs to borrow $1,000 from Dollar Loan Center. We offer signature loans up to $5,000 in minutes, and you don't need great credit or collateral. No checking account required, no application fees, and you only pay interest for the time you have the loan out. So if you need $1,000, it'll only cost you $7.56 per day. You can keep it out for a week, a month, a year. That's up to you. For new customers, the first week's interest is even on us. Give DLC a shot. You'll be glad you did. Stop by in Logan on US 89 by McDonald's or in Ogden on 12th at Lincoln. You can also get up to $5,000 in minutes at don'tbebroke.com and save the drive.
License by the Utah Department of Financial Institutions. Payment amounts based on biweekly pay frequency with annual percentage rate of 275%. For additional cost information, call 866-550-4352. Subject to approval, limitations may apply.
Do you know a champion in our community? Nominate them for the KVNU Above and Beyond Salute. Every Friday morning at 8:30, we'll spotlight a firefighter, law enforcement officer, healthcare worker, or other deserving individual and give them a $40 gift card to Firehouse Subs. Submit your nominations for the Above and Beyond Salute by visiting kvnutalk.com. Help us recognize the champions in our communities. The Above and Beyond Salute, sponsored by Firehouse Subs on News Talk KVNU, the voice of Northern Utah.
Final story of the day here after the Supreme Court struck down, well, didn't really strike down, but ruled against a Colorado law banning conversion therapy. A lot of people asking, what does that mean for Utah's ban on conversion therapy? For those who don't know what this is, conversion therapy was widely practiced in the 70s, 80s, and even in some circles quietly in the 90s. And it's the idea that you could change someone's sexual orientation through talk therapy, propaganda, and even electrocution and torture at a time in the 70s. There is no one in the medical world these days who believes this works. It doesn't. There was never any evidence that it did. And it was very harmful. In fact, one doctor quoted, I remember saying, the only thing conversion therapy produced was suicides. So thankfully the process is frowned upon, and many states now ban it, Utah included. Utah Republican lawmakers banned the practice here in Utah in 2020. So the Supreme Court, in an 8-1 decision today, meaning the liberals, all but one, sided with the conservatives on what was really a question of free speech. Can a therapist with religious convictions of a certain denomination and type talk about gender identity and sexual orientation in a way that matches her religious beliefs, which they didn't really get into in court? I think the example here, could a therapist talk to a minor who was having questions about their sexual orientation, for example, and say, well, you shouldn't act on those? Would that be against the law in Colorado? Well, Colorado's law says yes. You can't, convert someone you can't make someone something they're not. And you can't instruct them to do so as a therapist. The Supreme Court said, well, the therapist has free speech rights. So they kicked it back to the lower courts. Lower courts will now review the Colorado law under that new definition of strict scrutiny or judicial scrutiny that has been defined by the Supreme Court. So we'll see where that goes. But the Colorado law hasn't been struck down by the court. It was just the scrutiny was refined by the Supreme Court, and now the lower courts in Colorado have to review it again. What does this mean for Utah's law? Well, the interesting thing about this is one of Cache Valley's own, Representative Mike Peterson, may have actually saved Utah's law. In 2023, 3 years after the original ban was passed by state lawmakers, Representative Mike Peterson from here in Cache Valley worked with Equality Utah and some other organizations to craft a law that gave therapists some breathing room. So conversion therapy is still banned in the state of Utah, but therapists, talk therapists, even when working with a minor, which was the question in the Colorado lawsuit here when the minor's involved, they can talk about things. They can talk about their own opinions. They can explore ideas suggested by the patient, even if the patient is a minor, without worrying about running afoul of state law. And that might keep Utah's law on the books, Utah's ban on conversion therapy on the books. So, hats off to Representative Mike Peterson from Cache Valley. We're making the whole legislature a better place. Dave Ramsey.